Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. Back with the bow a little bit more. Just to review, with Seidokan and kobudo, Toma sensei pretty much just taught the two bo kata, two kun kata that we do, Toma no kun and Tokumine no kun, taught the Sai, Tonfa, and Kama forms that we do. We don't really, that I know of, we never really had to line up and run kihon basics in a structured way coming forward with the strikes. Now I may have covered a little of that back before. We also have the kihon with, as I mentioned last week, the quarterstaff or Kempo grip version. We would often, and in fact we can do this real quick, we would stand in a horse stance here together and he would strike to my head from his horse stance, strike upward to the groin, come into the side, come from the other side. Now roll over and strike downward with the left end, onto my head, and then upward, and then in from that side, and in from the other side, so that we've done those basics. And we could drill that just for reaction timing, get that clickety-clack going, which is always good rhythmically to have. But we don't really have the same kind of deal with our Seidokan system, unless, and many of us have brought in Matayoshi kobudo or Odo Kempo basic and fundamental techniques, again, where we're working just individual strikes in shiko or zen kutsudachi, right? Or coming around, striking, doing our different techniques and finish. So we don't really have a line drill, that's what I want to call it. We don't really have an established line drill format of kihon teaching, other than the instructors, and many of them have. I know Kurt Sieber and Chris Caggiano and several others have done, I think Donnie does also, some basic drilling of fundamental techniques. We pretty much learn the manipulation of the weapon via the kata themselves. Likewise, defensively, from the Okinawan perspective, we start here pretty much typically, and when we're working bo no bo or bow tie bow techniques, we start in this position, and then Sensei Nix has a numbered system where he has the attacks come a specific way. So take a fighting stance, lead your right foot, your bow weapon lead, right? So his attack scenario comes 1 with a poke, number 2 is also a poke, then number 3 is a side strike, number 4 is a low strike, and he has a numbering system for his attacks, and then he does his responses accordingly. I sort of have my own numbering system that I use, which again is forward strike, downward strike, high inward coming at him, mid inward, go ahead and you can block, mid inward, low, and these are all right foot stepping, overhand, right hand forward side. Then we do high with the reverse end, mid with the reverse end, bottom. So I have those 8 attacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 as my 8 lines of attack. And from those, then we do one-step style defensive techniques. So that's basically pretty much for the bow. Then on top of that, we have, and I covered this also, hold the bow forward this way. After I've blocked whatever his poke or hit is going to be, then let's say he's hit overhead. Okay, I want to look then at what are my entry points. If I blocked here, my first is on top of the bow, there. Then second would be inside this end, inside that end, and then back on this end, bringing it over from the top end. So I have entry 1, 2, 3, 4, then reverse it, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I can do all of those entries with my forward hand and with my reverse hand as well. So I have 8 entries front, 8 entries reverse bow. Then we add to that the angle of my stepping, whether I'm going straight in. So if he's coming, for example, overhead strike, and I come straight in, I stop the strike here with a strike or a block. From there, again, the throwing techniques and so forth. So I have 1 straight forward, Then I have 2:30, 3 o'clock, 4:30, 6 o'clock. So I can step in any of those directions. And then the same thing on the other side, stepping around the clock. So I have that octagonal pie cut of directions to set. When you combine all of those and sort of play and explore, you can kind of do what Bruce Lee talks about. You can discover what you already have within you, and teaching the techniques is merely a matter of refining the natural movement that occurs if he strikes as a, let's say, a right forward poke, right? And I come back to my 430 by pivoting, okay? Now I can explore whether I block this way in the hand, this way to the head, whether I come inside here, whether I come to the back and go running by and use the reverse side throw. So I can explore all of those things just as a mode of self-discovery. From a teaching perspective, I would designate the set techniques based on my attacks. So he attacks one with the poke. We did this technique the other day, or a couple weeks ago. He would attack two, overhead strike with the head, right? Again with the poke, and this time I would come from the back side, same throw, and so forth. And that's pretty much how the defensive techniques that I have taught up to this point evolve. So let's look. Do you remember the two reverse end? Okay. So now we're going to go. We've done poke 1 and strike 2. Now we're going to do the same 2 strikes again, but he's going to use the reverse end of the bow. So from here, I come in stabbing, boom. He uses the reverse end, and there's his breaking my wrist, or else I let go. And then on the other side, he steps off to the side, and again with the throw. So in this case, he's essentially doing the same entry point of my hand, only now he's using the reverse side of the bow before we finish him off. Okay? So if you put those angles together, and again, each instructor in our organization has whatever external study that they've done in the bow is how they approach it, whether it's from the Odo kobudo or Matayoshi kobudo or Kinjo kobudo or Yamaniju or whichever school, as I mentioned some of them last week as well. And from that, then we derive our techniques. Next week, depending on how much I've taught Max by then, we'll look at possible combinations of combo attacks where we're not only just going straight to the throw, but where there's more attacking scenario occurring, which requires some block and movement and multiple situational adjustments. That's it for today. Probably, unless we decide next week, that'll be the end of the bow forms for this section of the instructional, and then we'll move on from there. So thank you for joining. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing or boring. I know some people hate it, but there you go. Until next week, as always, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend a joke, send a funny meme, call your mom, but most importantly, let's keep practicing.